lounging, son.
All right, welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name is Ryan, and back with me again, one of my favorite creators in the biz, Mr. Mark Waid. A lot of stuff to catch up on. I think we talked last time. It was the first arc of World's Finest, so a lot has happened in that time. Yeah. Super stoked to kind of unpack that all with you. So Lazarus Planet is, let's just jump into that because that's about to end, but that's leading into the final issue of Batman versus Robin.
Right.
So what can we kind of expect with this conclusion? I mean, it's been a kind of a crazy event. I'm a huge fan of it.
It has, and the pacing of it has been interesting. I mean, again, Lazarus Planet, I still defend the idea that Lazarus Planet stands on its own because it's all about King Fireball defeating him. He's defeated at the end. Menace is diverted. Lazarus Planet is put back together and stuff. So, but the lead out is that Nezha has yet to be defeated. And so Batman versus Robin 5 is the ultimate final showdown between Robin and Nezha. I like the idea that the first four issues were Batman versus a possessed Robin, and then flipping the script at the end with a Robin versus possessed Batman. But either way, it ends with what I hope is like a heartbreaking sacrifice on Damian's part that will, you know, if I stuck the landing, hopefully it will give you the feels.
I mean, the whole series, especially Batman vs. Robin, gave me the feels. You know, like going through like him fighting all his former Robins and those just emotional connections. I think it was probably one of my favorite Batman comics in years. Just that one issue, you know, like the back and forth. And Damian is such a divisive character. You know, like you either love. I feel like you either love him or you hate him. There's no real like middle ground with him.
No.
But I think like what you took from like Joshua Williamson's run of Robin and how you kind of ran with that, I think it's just been amazing.
Thanks. And about that one issue of Batman and Robin, I mean, that was my favorite one to write, number 3, because I think that's my lane. My real lane is you give me any two DC characters in a conversation and I will show you who they are. And I think, you know, and give you hopefully some new insights as to who they are.
It's definitely your strong suit. It's definitely what I love probably the most about your writing. That's why I think last time we talked, I said how excited I was that you were back at DC. And it's just like everything that you've been, you know, firing on all cylinders. And, you know, let's, I'll jump into Shazam that you're relaunching. Completely seems like a completely different take than what we've been getting in recent memory. And you're paired with Dan Mora again.
Oh my God. Yeah. And to be clear, he's not leaving World's Finest. He's just that fast. He's going to do 2 books a month for a while.
That's insane.
I know. He can do a page in 2 hours. It's incredible. Like an inked page in 2 hours. It's incredible. I've never seen anybody work that fast ever. So, and he has kids. He has a life. I just don't know where he finds the time. So I can't write a page in 2 hours. So yeah, Shazam. I mean, the remit given to me from DC is fun. You know, not so silly that you can't take it seriously, but lean into the brighter aspects to it. And so tonally, I think it's going to be closer to Impulse than Flash, if you will. You know, it's not super sitcom-y, but there should be a lot of humor to it and a lot of lightness to it. And then every once in a while, then we'll, you know, twist the knife and show you some really evil, intense stuff.
I mean, I'm excited for that version because like while I have liked some of the recent stuff, like I like some of those like lighthearted books. You know, it's kind of like, I don't know, like when you took over Daredevil, for instance, you kind of took him out of like that super dark kind of era and you made it more like a swashbuckler type again, you know, like a little bit more joy to it. So to see like, I mean, that announcement alone, just you and Dan Mora just seemed like the perfect choice for the book. You know,
he's doing amazing work, and he's in it. I mean, he's really like into the approach. And again, none of this is a slight on what Jeff Johns did or anybody before us, and all that was all great work. It's just that, and we will be seeing the rest of the kids, you know, the not just Mary and Freddie, but the other kids. We won't see them immediately because, frankly, with 20 pages, one issue, and a whole new setup to explore, I need some elbow room, and it would be a disservice to bring those kids on in issue 1 just to have them wave in one panel and then go. I'd rather do something more substantial with them. Right now, the rules post Lazarus Planet are that it's only Billy who has the power. Mary has powers too, but and I can't talk about it, but that's a whole different thing. But Billy can no longer share the power for now. It's something he's aware of. It's something he's going to work on. It's something he's going to try to get back to because he feels especially bad for Freddy. But so that's a runner throughout the first arc. So is how do I give these powers back to my family?
Yeah, I mean, like the Shazam Captain Marvel character, whoever you want to call him,
Yeah.
he has such like an interesting history, because like going back to like his inception, like he was a super popular character, and then he kind of just felt
Superman. Those comics outsold Superman. They were the best-selling superhero comics of the 1940s. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just so weird that like he kind of just fell to the wayside. Like people just didn't like there were so many attempts like to do it, and just always just never seemed to strike that chord. So like, what is your kind of like intention and goal? Are you trying to are you going to do like an amalgamation of like all these different versions, or like are you going back to some of those original stories and like kind of revamping it in a way?
It's really kind of an amalgam of everything that's come before. Tonally, it's a little closer to older Captain Marvel stuff. But it's not the same. And I'll tell you the difference is that I've done it like just a few years ago, without having any connection to this. I did a complete read through of like every Captain Marvel story from 1940 up till like all through what's going on now. And the thing that struck me about the original stuff in the 40s and 50s, as cool as it was, as fun as it was, as beautiful looking as it was, is that the thing that's missing is stakes. There are very few high stakes in those stories, and they're whimsical, and so that worked for the time. They're fun to read, but I'm not sure in this day and age you can get away with superhero comics without any real stakes to them. So that's the tricky part, is trying to figure out how to make those two worlds mesh together so that there's actual danger, actually real threats. But beyond that, it really is just getting back to the spirit of what makes the character cool. What makes the character cool is that you're a kid and you get to say a magic word and become a superpowered adult.
Yeah.
That's the cool part. Everything else is window dressing. So get back to that, drill down on how cool that is. And then there's some drawbacks to it too, which I don't want to get into, but you'll see more in issue 1, where there's reasons Billy changes back to Billy every once in a while, not just because he has to go to school, but because there are a couple of drawbacks to being Captain Marvel. Nothing grim and gritty, but just little psychological things that I don't think anybody's ever brought to the table before.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it is the ultimate dream to be a kid and to be able to just like say a word and you're this amazing superhero, like, would you want to go? Like, I mean, I don't know. I'm thinking of myself, like as a little kid, would I even want to change back,
Right.
Or would I just want to stay with the powers all the time? But yeah, that's an interesting thing.
Yeah, Tom Pyre and I did a series for Aftershock a few years ago that just vanished beneath the waves, called Captain Kidd, which was about someone with that power, but now he's like in his mid-50s, and he says the magic word again after all these years, and he becomes a young man. And so the question becomes, why in the world would you change back to a human being?
And I want to ask too, because like I kind of like the name Captain Marvel. I understand for reasons like that he can't be called that, which to me is just insane since he was around before comics was even a thing. But I heard that you're planning on calling him the Captain, or referring to him as the Captain instead of Shazam.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's been overblown in comic resources headlines that it's not you're not gonna see merchandising in your toy store with the Captain written on it. It gives me something to call him, because I want to get back to the idea that he cannot say the word without changing. Because if you fudge it so where he can say his name, but only if but he has to be thinking about something if he's going to use it as a magic word, that takes all the power out of the magic of the word, not just for him but for the readers. Like it makes the word less special. And so I want to get back to that, but then he needs something to call himself. So there's a moment in issue 1 where we understand why he's called and he doesn't walk around going, "Hi, I'm the captain." It's more like when he's forced to tell people who he is, that's, I'm the captain. It's like Doctor Who doesn't walk around calling himself, "I'm the doctor." That's what he calls himself when people say, "Who are you?"
So like that whole aspect of not being able to say his name without reverting, I mean,
Right.
like, so that's just, you're saying like that's how he would refer to himself. "Oh, I'm the captain," or something like that.
Right. And
And
and other people refer to him that. I'm just saying that it's not like this is not something that you're going to see on beach towels. It's not something, it's within the comic. It's also like the other reason you can't do Captain Marvel as a name is, yes, I mean, Marvel obviously has the trademark and the copyright. Back in the, in the early days of the revival in the 70s, they did get to call him Captain Marvel inside the comics without putting, as long as they didn't put his name on the cover. The
right.
problem that they run into is merchandising. The problem is that you can't call him Captain Marvel on a toy. You can't call him Captain Marvel in an action figure. You can't call him Captain Marvel in a video game. And so, for better or worse, that, we just kind of stopped calling him Captain Marvel in the comics because you can't use that name anywhere but inside the pages of a DC comic, and it is a little confusing. So I get it. I don't love it, but I get it.
Yeah, I always thought that was weird. Like, I know, like the Jerry Ordway, like the power of Shazam, and like when I was younger, I didn't really notice the fact that you just couldn't put it on the title, and
Right.
it does kind of suck that it's part of his history, and then like to have to
Oh,
change that,
totally sucks. Yes, but
like it just
yeah.
it just doesn't make, it's hard as a fan to like accept it still, even though I understand it like legally why it's
Oh,
done that
yeah. I
way.
still cannot help but call him Captain Marvel when I'm just talking about it to my editor. But it's, it sucks, but those are the cards that you're dealt, and those
Yeah,
will never ever change unless Marvel goes out of business, and that's not happening anytime
that's not
soon.
gonna happen. Well, I love your little like sidestep around it. I'm kind of
Thanks.
interested to see how that kind of works. And I know you talked about like the supporting cast. What about like characters like Taki Tani? Is that
Yeah.
something that those kind of characters going to come in?
Oh yeah, he shows up in issue 1. He's the cook at the house. He's just hanging out. I really, there's dinosaur, there's talking dinosaurs, there's talking Tawny. There's I really want that sense of, I mean, monsters, Adam's family, in a way, that sense of, yeah, this is the weird world they live in, and they just take it completely for granted. So every once in a while, you might have somebody come in the house who sees a talking tiger cooking and freaks out. But, to Billy and his friends, that's just the world they live in. All these cool things happen.
And what else besides the kids and stuff? Like, are you planning on like kind of maybe expanding on his rogues gallery? Because I feel like it's somewhat limited. You know what I mean? Like, there's not a huge cast of villains or even new characters that you're gonna kind of
Right.
introduce.
He's got a very shallow bench
Yeah.
of villains, and they're good stuff, but I don't have a Captain Marvel, Shazam, Savannah story in me immediately. So I think what will be fun is bringing in other DC villains to deal with him that he's never seen before. It's one of the things I like about working with World's Finest too, is putting together combinations of characters that you don't normally see. Batman and the Doom Patrol or whatever. That's so, Shazam and, Gorilla Grodd or whoever. I mean, that I think will help expand his world a little bit.
And so what are your like kind of like what are the goals of this series? Do you have like a set amount of issues that you're planning? Is this something that you could see yourself kind of just continuously writing as long as you
Yeah,
got the stories?
yeah. As long as I've got something to say, I haven't seen it. Yeah, it's not a limited series. So let's just keep going.
Awesome. Awesome. So I want to talk a little bit about World's Finest.
Sure.
You dropped an insane bomb and
Yeah.
at the reveal of Sunboy. First of all, how hard was it for you to keep that secret? And did anybody ever guess?
No, there was one post on one social media board. That's it. Only one. I told everybody all along, this is a character you already know. This is, he's a character you already know, and no one got it, which was thrilling to me. I've had that bullet in the chamber for 25 years because this was originally the plot of The Kingdom, which was the Kingdom Come spinoff that I did. Uh, and for whatever reason, I just didn't. I ended up abandoning it and going with a completely different direction for The Kingdom. But that's this whole thing is a plot I've had in my back pocket for 25 years.
And is it something that you plan on, like, are you going to revisit that story, or are you going to go back to it, or do you think you're going to let it just kind of sit for a while?
I'm going to let it sit for a while. I mean, it would be fun to go back to it. I want to do it in a way where I coordinate it with Alex so that he won't have time to participate, although we'd be welcome to if he wanted to. But it's a co-creation. So I don't want to be disrespectful and just assume that I got free reign with all these characters. It's, this is the kind of thing that I would have to sit down and have a conversation with Alex about.
Okay. And then what can we expect next upcoming in World's Finest?
Well, the next arc is metamorphocentric because I think he's an awesome character that no one nails exactly right. No one gets his powers right, and no one really does a deep dive into what it's like to have those powers and what it is like to be. I mean, he's not human. He is human, but he's not human. He thinks like a human being, but he's not. Like, he has no heartbeat. It's not like he has internal organs that match our internal organs. He used to be a human being, but for those who don't know, he was Indiana Jones before Indiana Jones existed, right? He was Rex Mason, fortune hunter, explorer, and he was bathed in the radiation of a meteor that scrambled the elements inside his body. They didn't give him the ability to create any element. They instead just scrambled, like an egg, the elements within his home body. So when he awakens, and you'll see this in the first World's Finest issue, number 13 with him, we've retconned it a little bit so he doesn't just wake up and still look like a human being, but he's got different colors on his chest. No, he's misshapen. He can't form, like, his body doesn't remember how to put itself together right. So it's a process where he has to figure out, with Sapphire's help, his girlfriend's help, how to walk like he's made out of flesh and bone now, or how to talk again, how to not just fall apart into a puddle. And when he does, then that's when he puts his so that's the focus of that first couple of issues of the next arc. But we bring in other characters pretty quickly, and by the end of that arc, I think you'll see a ton of DC characters. A lot of them we haven't touched yet, but this is World's Finest, but it's also sort of like stealth, brave, and bold, right? Mm-hmm. It's a way of bringing in other DC characters here and there, like we did with the first arc, and just let's do the whole DC universe. We'll focus on Superman and Batman, but really, it's a DC universe book.
I love that. I mean, you must just be having a blast being able to play in the entire sandbox.
It is so much fun. It really so much fun, and it's the tricky part is, what was asked of me was to do something that was a little bit out of continuity. So we put it a little bit in the past, so we can use all the classic toys, and we don't have to worry about what's going on in the current books, and make that all marry up. But at the same time, to give it some weight, to make sure that it counts, if you will. Every story needs to lead into something, or at least have some connection to something that's happening in the DC universe now, which is my decision to make. And that's what we did with, the first arc, where it spills into Batman versus Robin, with a second arc, well, obviously that big surprise at the end that makes it connect to the DC universe in a bigger way. And same with the third arc, and same with the fourth arc. It just, that's going to be the secondary goal. It's hard because a lot of times we're talking about books that I don't have anything to do with, like, Batman versus Robin, yes, but third arc is going to lead into something that I don't necessarily have control over once it's out of my hands. Does that make any sense? Like, it's not a book that I'm writing.
Right. So
Yeah.
are you privy to that stuff? Like, are they kind of telling you, like, are you going to them asking them kind of like what's going on
Yeah,
and then working your
that's
story
more.
around it?
Yeah, it's not like I'm getting all the scripts and stuff ahead of time. It's more like I'm just going to my editor and saying, okay, let reach out to the other editors and see if there's anything that I can do that plays into what they want to do.
Okay. And then is there any arcs that you have planned that you are going to kind of dovetail into something that you would in turn write? Or
Nothing yet. To be honest, all I've got lined up in my head is the third arc and the fourth arc. I know I could write this book until the end of time, so there will be further arcs, but that's all I know right now.
okay. And I wanted to ask, like, how connected or how much do you have to like kind of worry about necessarily like the Batman line or the Superman line, since you have both of those characters in it? And do
Not at
they
all.
have
Yeah, that's the whole point of doing it. Is a couple of years ago, we can't hand wave you away. Like, we don't say exactly when it is, but it's a few years ago. That's so we don't have to. There's some great stories that are happening in those books,
Mhm.
but it's hard to do like a Superman Batman team up book if you're doing current continuity and Superman's on War World and Batman is no longer living in the the Batcave and Wayne Manor and stuff, and you have to keep having to adjust those continuities to mesh into one story. That's really hard to do. So let's just take it a little bit out of continuity, put it a little bit back in the past, and that way we get to not have to worry about those things.
And are you still going to like, because I know like Neza was retroactively inserted into the past in the DC
Yeah,
universe. Have you thought about continuing to do that with either heroes or more new villains?
yeah. There's nothing. Yeah, actually, there was. Yeah, there's actually, come to think of it. Yeah, one of the big bads in the third arc is sort of a retro, retcon situation. Um, Fourth one, not so much, but it's and not so much superheroes, but I mean it's you need supervillains for these stories, and you can only do so many Captain Cold stories. You need some for Superman and Batman. You need big menaces, and that bench in the DC universe of big menaces that Superman and Batman haven't already met is also very shallow. So sometimes we have to come up with new villains.
Okay, and I wanted to ask you, you mapped out the multiverse.
Yeah, yeah.
Can we kind of talk a little bit about that and the
Sure.
work that went into mapping that out? Because I mean, you added a lot of new stuff that previously was not necessarily connected or didn't have an exact Earth, but I know
Right.
there's other things that haven't been kind of
Right.
cataloged.
Right. And I mean, frankly, we might have been able to catalog them, but as you saw when we did for those who aren't sure what we're talking about, we did a book called Big Bang, which was the sort of mapping of the DC multiverse as it exists now. And in the back, there was like a 2-page, here's Barry Allen's notes on the different worlds. There could have been more worlds there, but as you saw, it's already in like 4-point type. Like,
Mhm.
so we just didn't have the physical space in the book to do much more of that list than what we already have now. But yeah, it's way there's stuff to be added. I also didn't want to come out and say, okay, this is the definitive list and there's nothing else to be added. And because that defeats the purposes of infinite worlds and a multiverse to put
Right.
rules on it like that, put boundaries on it. So it was a lot of fun to do. I mean, Grant Morrison had obviously laid a lot of the groundwork with his multiverse series. And so the first 52 worlds are just taken straight from that. But
Mhm.
then branching out from there, it was a lot of fun to go back through my old comics and look for old references and old, parallel Earths and what can we do to fit that in here.
Yeah, I love it because I mean, some of them were just like one issue stories that
Yeah,
became an Earth. So
yeah.
how did you decide? How did you decide what was worthy of kind of putting in there? Was it personal favorites? Was it, or like how did that come about?
It was dealer's choice. It was all right. So my rule was, first off, anything that appeared more than once gets priority, right?
Yeah.
But that still leaves me some leeway. So what else has some resonance? Well, the world of Superman Red, Superman Blue has not been revisited, but it's such an important story and such a memorable story that people refer to it this day. So as opposed to like a one random issue of Green Lantern where he visits a world where he and Carol Ferris are married. We never go back there. It's not that important. So the only one that was pure vanity on my, like the only one that was didn't really need to be there was the world where everybody is the same exact as us, except they're all werewolves. Just because I love that. I read that description, I remember that story, and I just burst out laughing. What a great description for a world. Everybody's like us, except they're all werewolves. That's it.
Yeah. I liked the fact that you connected Superman 77 with Batman 89. That was
Yeah, that was
probably
actually a request from the editor. That was actually a request from the editor of who's doing the Batman 89 and the Superman 77 book. So 78 books. So I'm happy to do that. I think that's a really good idea.
Oh yeah, I mean, I love it personally.
Yeah.
Do you have any story ideas coming out of that mapping of the multiverse of like stuff that you kind of want to touch on, or do you think that that's something you may explore within World's Finest?
It's something I want to explore in World's Finest, not immediately, but I want to go to some of those places. I want to go to there with a lot of those places. So no concrete plans, but yeah, I've got stories in mind for some of those worlds. Yeah.
Okay. And then I wanted to kind of ask, like, what else? I know you have some stuff in the works. I feel like I heard a rumor or an announcement on a Superman book.
Brian Hitch and I have been slaving away for the last 3 years on a Black Label Superman book that we will, once I get my ass in a gear and finish that third issue, we will, you'll see. I predict you'll see it sometime in by between now and the end of the year. And he's doing amazing work. It's that Black Label formats. It's a little bigger. It plays to Brian's widescreen strengths. It looks amazing. And I can't really talk about more than that because I don't want to give away too much, but it's very much in the Birthright vein. It's not strictly a sequel to Birthright so much as it is, this is my Luthor, this is my Superman, this is how I interpret these characters. So they're very consistent with the Birthright story.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, I loved that new deluxe edition that came out this past year.
Just beautiful looking, it's beautiful printing. Yeah, everybody who worked on that book is really thrilled with the way it turned out. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, still probably one of my favorite Superman origin books, if not my favorite. You know, I loved your interpretation of it, getting to see a different version of Clark than we ever saw before. You know, you really looked more at him as Clark than Superman. You know, it's kind of like,
you really have to think about this. You have to really think, and I think this is again my wheelhouse, is really think about what it's like to have those powers, not just when you're punching stuff, but on an everyday moment to moment basis. What is it like to have those abilities, no matter what character you're dealing with? And Clark is the perfect example. I mean, again, he's walking around the world in glasses and, trying to pretend to be somebody else. And every moment of every day is a chance for him to screw that up.
Yeah, I mean, it just that specific story just reminds me why I love Superman. You know, like that. It really does, because like my brother, Superman's his favorite character. For me, it was always Flash because of your run. You know, like that was my first comic book, was a Flash from that run. So, but I feel like Superman, it goes, for me, it's like it's in waves of like the way I kind of enjoy what they do with Superman. Right now, I'm kind of excited with this new Dawn of DC. I think it looks really cool.
So I think that first issue with Josh Williamson is really nice. It's a really good book.
Yeah, I haven't gone to the shop yet, so I'm picking it up later today. I can't wait.
Really enjoy it. It's really good. It feels very classic Superman, but at the same time, it doesn't feel retro in any way, shape, or form.
All right, cool. Yeah, I can't wait to read that.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, I wanted to ask you, Wally West.
Yeah.
Like you made him my favorite character in comics with your writing. So I kind of curious, like, are you kind of like, how do you feel about the way the character is now that they've kind of gotten rid of some of the crap that they put him through, which I really hated?
Yeah, I think Jeremy Adams is doing a great job. I told him the other day, like the 1 second war that's going on right now. I am so bitterly jealous of that idea. That is such a great idea. I like his characterization of Wally. I like his characterization of Linda and the kids. I think and it has a slightly less grim tone to it, and I really digging that. I think he's doing a great job. I have no interest whatsoever in ever writing a Wally adventure again as long as I live, because all I can do is disappoint you. That's all I can do at this point.
You answered my next question. I was going to ask if you
Yeah.
ever wanted to
Oh,
write Wally. Any of the Flash characters? Have you ever
oh yeah.
thought of?
Yeah, there's a 6-pager I'm doing with one of the other Flash characters. It's coming up soon. That's all I can say there. But yeah, I don't mind touching the other Flash characters, but Wally, it just seems like a recipe for disaster. The best I can do is, again, I think we talked about this last time we talked, is that the danger in going back and doing something you've done before is that people will remember that work through the rose-colored glasses of nostalgia as well. So they will be comparing you not necessarily to what you did before, but they will be comparing this work to their memory and their love for the work that you did before. So it's really a recipe for disaster. Like I never would have gone back to Captain America for a few issues if not for Chris Samnee saying this is what I want to do. So he was my safety net there. Even if you didn't like what I did, it's going to look amazing. So I'm very particular about trying not to go back and revisit these characters that I'm really associated with, because it just seems like a doom trap.
Yeah, I mean, it totally makes sense. I just, as a Wally fan, I had
Sure.
to ask, you know.
Yeah.
So what else is in the works? Do you have anything else that you can kind of tease or talk about?
What can I tease? I mean, but sometime this year you'll be seeing more Irredeemable. You know, we did that Kickstarter a few months ago that was really
Right.
successful, and so we will be doing another Irredeemable series. Is it 4? Is it 12? Is it what is it? It still hasn't quite taken shape yet, but that's something I'm working on actively with Boom. There's another DC series in the works that I can't talk about yet, but I'm writing that today, and boy, it's just so much fun. It's just so much fun. I mean, Shazam, World's Finest, another DC thing, the Superman Black Label thing. It's a pretty full plate, but
All right.
I'm having a great time.
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, huge fan of your work, huge fan that you're back at DC. I think you were sorely missed for such a long time.
Thank you.
It feels good to have you back. I'm just kind of like, before we wrap it up, I just wanted to ask one last question.
Sure.
When you're attacking a new project, like when you're about to start writing, what's the first thing you kind of think about? Is it that emotional kind of pull for something?
It's that strip it down to what it originally was, figure out why that worked, what was cool about it, and why that concept has lasted 30, 40, 50, 60 years. Really think about that and try to be, without being slavish about it, if you're going to err on the side of author intent. Go err on the side of keeping it closer to what the original creators came up with, because and I've said this before, whether it's Superman or Wonder Woman or whoever, any of these characters that have lasted since long before I was born, you may think you know exactly what it is that made those characters last that long, but you don't. Because if we did know that, we'd be creating characters every week now that are going to last the next 70 years, and that doesn't seem to be happening. There's an X factor in all of those characters. There's just a little, whether it's timing or art style or anything, there's a little X factor there that you don't know what it is and you can't really replicate. So you work really hard to make sure that you get back to as much of those core principles as you can, and then build out from there.
All right, cool, man. Well, I just want to thank you again for taking time to chat with me. I look forward to doing this again with you in the future. We can talk about some of those projects you haven't announced yet. And everybody listening and watching, go pick up World's Finest. Go pick up all the Lazarus books, Batman versus Robin and Shazam when that comes out. Talk to you again in the future.
You bet. Take care, man.
Have a good one.
Thanks.